So welcome back again, Aniket and Agastya, and we'll continue our discussion about your experiences about the whole MS in US application process. Uh, so, in the whole application process, I mean, when students start applying, one thing that is always at the back of their mind is scholarships. Like everybody is, everybody wants scholarships or some kind of funding opportunities. So when you applied, was that a major factor for you that okay, I would want to go to a university that give me scholarship? And if not, of course, did you get any kind of scholarships, on-campus jobs, or any kind of funding opportunities while you were at the program?
So I can go first.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, scholarship. While applying, scholarship wasn't something I looked at, and I was keeping an eye out on the employment opportunities during the 2 years, like RA ships or TA ships, which were available. Um, but to answer your other question, scholarship was offered to me, and in a class of like 100 and 110, around 20 to 25% of the students were offered scholarship, various percentages, but they were offered. Uh, and I don't think, at least at NYU, you need not separately apply for a certain scholarship. As once you apply once you put in your application, you're automatically considered for it, and if they deem you eligible for it, they'll provide it to you.
Okay.
And although I didn't look at that, like I said, I looked at the employment opportunities at NYU specifically while the 2 years of my course was going on. Um, and it at NYU, at least, it is pretty difficult to get a job during these 2 years.
You mean
Just
student
because,
job?
yeah, student job, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'd say mainly because the number of students compared versus the number of jobs available is pretty skewed. So it's a challenge, but people do get it.
Okay. And how about you, Aniket?
Right. So for me, our program didn't have any scholarships. It just didn't have the budget because it was part of certain classification where the program did not have like allocated scholarships or funding. But having said that, I did like ask them after my admit if they had any scholarships available and they would be willing to roll them out because that was the advice I received from one of the persons I had talked to on LinkedIn that, just ask for scholarship regardless. So I did that.
Sure.
And it turned out that they did give out a scholarship.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are plenty of programs that say that they do not. So I would highly recommend to, once you get the admit, just try talking to the admissions committee and see if they can help you out in any way.
Okay.
So yeah, and it helped me get through I think like half of my first semester's fee, so that was nice.
Okay.
And it wasn't need or merit. I'm not sure what it was based out of, but they
Sure.
did
Right.
give it out. Mhm.
Sure. Okay. And did you guys, either of you, do any kind of student job? I mean, of course, Agastya, you said it was difficult, but RATA jobs or while you were studying?
Uh, yes. So I started working in my second semester.
Okay.
Uh, I The first semester, even before I joined, I was I was 50-50 whether I wanted to work the first semester or not, till I settled in at least. But I did see that many students were actively trying for jobs in the first semester itself, so that motivated me as well. I worked in my second, third, and fourth semesters.
And
Uh,
what did you work as?
I worked as TA,
Teaching
teacher.
assistant.
Yep, teaching assistant for 3 semesters, and as part of that, they cover your insurance. At NYU, they don't waive your fees,
Okay.
your uh, your tuition fee essentially, but they cover your insurance and they pay you. They pay you for your work, and then that covers your everything else, like your
Like
rents
it
and
took care of your living costs. At least.
yeah, completely took care of my living costs
Okay.
comfortably.
Okay.
And they covered everything else except the tuition fees. And the way I went about securing this job is that the way I did it is speaking to the professor who takes the course, who instructs the course. But there are other avenues where you can go to a certain office or go to a certain department and just speak to the administrators there, or you can speak to a professor.
So on that, I mean, just to understand, so you approached this professor for a TA position.
Yeah.
Had you taken a course with him in the earlier semester?
Yes. So in my first semester, I had taken a course with him,
Okay.
and I think halfway or just after halfway through the course, I spoke with the professor saying that, okay, I'm interested in this subject matter. And if he had any openings, I'd be happy to just put in my name.
Hmm.
He was more than happy to consider me. And he also did mention that because this is kind of a merit based job, he would look at my performance in the rest of the semester.
Okay.
And if I did well, he'd take me. I did well, and he took me.
Okay.
Um, this is one kind, like I said. The other kind is just you can put in your resume in a portal, in a portal that NYU has,
Okay.
and the department do choose students randomly based on their skill sets.
Okay.
But if you have a professor's recommendation, it becomes much more easier.
Okay. And how were things at Austin, Aniket?
Right. So my program was, like I said, an accelerated one, 34 credits in 10 months. So the program director actively discouraged, working part-time while during the program. We were not allowed to do RA or TA, but, some certain people also did like on-campus jobs just to supplement, as they found time. I did not because I wanted to, focus on getting the dream job that I wanted. And I found, like it would be just better to focus on, one thing at a time. While, yeah. But having said that, I did know certain folks outside of my program, the ones who were enrolled in 2 years. Uh, they did some RA or TA jobs during their time there. Many of them had DA shifts even before they got here in the US by
Okay.
speaking to professors. And uh, they had, since it's a public school, they had their like tuition waived off, insurance covered, and a stipend. So many of them were actually earning
While studying, yeah.
to study. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was nice.
Oh, okay. Fine. And one of the things that in the whole application process that students are a little worried about is the visa process. I mean, it's not necessarily that you should be scared of the visa, but visa is always on the back of your mind. I mean everything, because of course I understand it happens at the end, and there are, in case it gets rejected, all your time and efforts that you put in the whole application process goes waste. So, how was your experience with the visa, Aniket?
Yeah. So for me, I just prepared about the usual questions about why this program and what do you hope to achieve out of it, and just some questions about my background and how I plan to fund it. So my interview experience was actually pretty straightforward. They asked me pretty much the questions that I had anticipated. Um, for the first question, I guess, was about why this program specifically, and how it relates to what you want to do. So UT Austin MSBA was I mean, it still is a like top program, so it wasn't much of convincing to do there. And then immediately the next question was about how I plan to fund it. Um, and when I mentioned my scholarship, uh, I think that was like the something that sealed the deal because after that they didn't ask any questions, and uh, that was the end of my interview. So hardly maybe like 5 to 10 minutes or less than that actually.
Okay, okay. And Agastya, with you, I believe you were lucky enough to use the Dropbox facility.
Yes. So I had a prior tourist visa, which was still valid when I was applying for my student visa.
Mhm.
So for me, it was just biometry and Dropbox mechanism. I didn't have it. I didn't have to go through anything.
Right. I mean, just to put it on record that they still have the Dropbox facility, but this year they, I mean, earlier they allowed a Dropbox facility for any student who had any visa stamped on their passport. So even students with tourist visas could use the Dropbox facility. But this year they removed the tourist visa option from the Dropbox. In the sense, if you had a tourist visa, you still had to go for a visa. If you had a some other visa, which was mostly an F1 visa, then you, I mean, so if you already had an F1 and you're applying for your second F1, you could use the Dropbox. So that was something that they changed this year. I'm not sure how long the Dropbox facility will continue, but yeah, there were some students who really could take advantage of that Dropbox over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to ask you that in the if you probably I'm sure a lot of students do contact you in terms of how do we apply, where do we apply, and all those things. So in terms of applications, if you have to give one piece of advice to the next students who are applying for the 2025 intake, what would that be?
I'd say give yourself enough time between each step of the process, that is shortlisting, SOPs, LORs, your standardized tests, all these stuffs. Because you never know what might go wrong. Not that it will. It is a pretty straightforward process, but it still is unstructured. So it's better to be safe than to be sorry. So give yourself enough time. And one key thing I'd say is that if you are pretty sure about a couple of universities, try and get in your application before the first deadline or the priority deadline.
Okay.
At least psychologically, I feel that it improves your chances of getting into the college.
Okay.
Um,
No, it
so
does.
give
It
me,
does. So someone they of
yeah,
course have multiple rounds. Not all programs have multiple rounds of application, but yeah,
yeah.
in case they do.
So yeah, I just say like give yourself enough time and start as early as you can
Okay.
once you decide.
How about you, Aniket?
Yeah, so I would say, like, well, similar to Agastya, give yourself enough time and also plan and prepare as much as you can. There's a lot of factors involved that are out of your control.
Right.
So, the more you plan and anticipates things, the less luck has a chance to play in how things pan out, right?
Right.
So little things, for example, like trying to see, okay, this is the program fee, how are you planning to fund it, and then as far as ROI is concerned, try to see what's the median salary range after people graduate, and try to see, okay, will you be able to pay back loans. So in my case, like, I had planned it down to the last detail as much as I could, as to what will happen during my time there. Um, so I would say, and that avoided any sudden surprises to me while applying and even while I was here.
Okay. And one thing I think Agastya mentioned about the standardized tests. You both gave the GRE, right? Because a lot of programs, I mean, during COVID time and even now, many universities have made GRE either not required or optional. But I guess you both took the GRE. And how was your experience preparing for the test? I mean, what resources did you use, and what would you recommend that students should definitely do, or what can they to improve or get a good score?
Yep. So for me, I gave my GRE during the COVID lockdown period. So I didn't know when they were going to be administering the test and when they might discontinue. So for me, the time frame was pretty constrained. I had a month to prepare for the GRE test. Um, I think f- focusing on verbal will be the best option. At least in my experience, that was what worked for me. Maths is pretty easy if you're, especially if you're coming from an engineering background like I did. You need not spend a lot of time on it, provided you get a hang of what kind of questions are usually asked. Um, Coming to the resources, I use two main resources. One would be the GRE uh, official books which they provide when you pay the examination fee, and a couple of mock tests. And yeah, and there's this pretty standard book called Manhattan 5 Pound Prep book. Uh, the main reason I went with that on top of the existing GRE material is I just wanted to increase the number of questions I solved, especially in the verbal section. Just so I get used to the kind of questions they ask, and that familiarity helps a lot with speed and with precision. So Manhattan 5 Pound book is something I used along with the GRE material, and the mock tests. I think they provide two mock tests, and the way I structured them out was I right at the outset I gave one mock test just to gauge where I was at before I start my prep and how much I need to focus on and what I need to focus on. And one test was like after 4 weeks, so before I started, and just 2 days before the exam, I gave another mock test.
Oh. And what resources did you use, Aniket, for your test?
Right. I had heard from seniors that verbal section was something to watch out for. So I invested heavily into preparing for verbal. Also, the first resource that I did was Magoosh flashcards. So they have a set of basic, intermediate, and advanced words. I did all of the basic ones, like 80% of the intermediate, I believe, and maybe 5% of advanced. Well, yeah, practically nothing from advanced actually. Um, but yeah, and then I also did the some high frequency word list that I saw online. I believe there's one from parents. I believe it's like 500 or 1,000 word list. I didn't necessarily do all of them, of course, but the ones that I did, I made sure to do them repeatedly because words are something that they are, once you start looking at it twice or thrice, then they drill into your head and you try to well, when the exam time comes, this they stick out. So so yeah, that was, and then yeah, again for the comprehension and everything, I used the Manhattan 5 Pound book for the verbal section of it and the quant section as well. In fact, for quant, I only use the Manhattan 5 Pound notebook.
Okay.
And yeah, that was able to get me through all of the questions actually.
Okay. So, thank you both for joining. But before you go, I just wanted to ask you one last thing. If there is something that what was it that you really liked about your whole experience of studying at maybe at NYU and the Austin? Something that really felt was the wow factor at these universities.
For me personally, it was the collaborative nature of the classroom, the way the instructors structure their courses, and secondly, the more independent nature in the sense that they aren't very stringent with what they expect from you during the course. Uh, they give you a general direction, and then they ask you to explore and then try and figure it out by yourself. So I think that really helps to just learn the subject and learn the actual content by yourself rather than spoon feeding stuff.
Okay.
Um, I think these two were really a departure from what I actually experienced in Indian education system, and it was a welcome change for me.
Okay.
So yeah, I really enjoyed these two aspects of it.
What was nice or great about the Austin?
Right. So for me, I think the kind of people that I met here and the network that I built was something that I find it hard to believe I would have made everywhere else. And I met the people from the advisory board of my program. These were very senior people at great organizations, and they were there to guide us. All through the program as well as after the program ended. So that was really nice. Austin is, well, the UT Austin is like very close to downtown, so it had the perks of, we had a lot of events going on, and there was always something or the other happening. So there was never a dull day at UT Austin.
So as far as
Um,
I remember, I mean, I had spent some time in Texas, and Sixth Street
so
at Austin was a very famous.
yeah,
Is it still that famous, the Sixth Street?
yeah.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's the historical Sixth
I
Street.
told everybody, go to Austin, you have to visit the Sixth Street. So, uh, Yes.
Yeah, it's very fond memories from that.
Okay, good. Right. So thank you for Agastya and Aniket for joining in, and maybe we'll connect again for discussion on some more topics. But thank you once again.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. Thanks for having us. Bye.
Thank you.